Hi there. Welcome to this workshop that we're running for gamesindustry.biz, which have partnered with Creative Assembly. My name is Danny. My colleague here, this is Jazz Dhatt. She's the lead character artist at Creative Assembly, and a Forbes 30 under 30 winner. So she's very successful and she knows what she's talking about. She's very, very good. Her specialities include creature sculpting, reptiles and dragons, comparative anatomy, and design philosophy. And primarily, she's been working on the Warhammer games for the past few years.
Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Good.
This is Danny Sweeney. He's a senior character artist at Creative Assembly. He's on my team. He's one of my minions. You've probably seen Danny everywhere across Twitter. He's done so many things. He's done so many workshops. To be honest, I'm very proud of him.
Aw,
And yeah, of course.
that's really
And his
sweet.
specialities, cool, you're welcome. He's like pro at hard surface modeling. He can do organic sculpting. He can do everything. He's very, very good character artist. And yeah, that's our introductions.
Okay, so where do we begin regarding making a monster? So much in the ways of Dr. Frankenstein himself, he understood that creating monsters is a blend between science and art, and that's especially true for modern day representation of creatures and monsters in video games. We need to
Yes.
research. We need to research and understand what the foundations are, and learn what the rules are so we can break them. Okay, so here's an example of I think these both came out at the same time, the same year roughly. One is successfully designed, and one is a little lacking in terms of design philosophy, and so it's relatively weaker looking than its counterpart on
Yeah.
the right. But the idea is that through research, science, and art, we can learn what looks good and what looks bad. We want to equip ourselves as artists with an arsenal of methodologies and reasons
Mm.
and understanding to understand how to create the best art we can.
Yeah.
Um, Another example is a Killer Croc from the Batman games. On the left,
Mm.
this was his first iteration on the left, and on the right, I think it's a much more successful design because
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I remember this was a big thing for you back when we were talking about this a while back, um, especially when we were talking about reptile creatures. But yeah, so like what we have to understand is character artists work in the games industry. We want to make things look as cool as they can, right? But there's always a level of negotiation that has to be had with the other facets of game development. Like, do we have the time to do this? Can it be done within the engine limitations that we have? Um, does it work in concept, and does that concept translate to 3D?
Mm.
And if so,
Yeah.
cool. So you can you can make things look cool if you kind of have things in tandem. Strong concepts, the ability to do so in the engine, and strong design philosophies. So
Yeah.
largely today we are going to be focusing on this. Is it well designed? Can it be done? I'm going to assume yes. And does it work
Mm.
in 3D? I'm going to assume that as character artists watching this, you understand how to translate a concept from 2D to 3D.
Mm.
Obviously, there's always liberties that have to be taken when you're translating from 2D to 3D, but
Mm.
largely today we're going to be talking about how to get the best out of designs and what to consider. Or rather, what we use in the team to get successful designs. Like I think you've, especially your stuff, Jazz, you've created some amazing stuff, just kind of obeying even this stuff to begin with, right?
Yes. Like as you were saying, like, you can't just get everything. You can't just jump into it, at once. It has to be broken down into everything. Like, for example,
Yeah, you got to like break it down into little chunks. That's the thing. And so these are the beginner chunks for me, at least. And I think
yes.
you can use a similar methodology. You want to research. You want to use understanding of the real world to build up a repertoire of comparative anatomy. We'll get to that in a little bit. But to begin with, once you've started your research, you want to try and convey the character through successful storytelling. And so that means that you have to kind of get into the nitty gritty of what your character is, where they
Like,
live, what they eat.
yeah, where it comes from. It's it it's my most important thing, to be honest. Is when you're designing and making a monster, always think about its background, its character, where it's from. As Danny said, what it's eating as well, which sounds very little and doesn't sound as important, but in the end, it will make your character so much stronger.
Yeah, like I always think of it like a D&D stat block,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, that's a really good way to look at it, actually.
Because you can obviously define its strength, dexterity, constitution, blah 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 blah. How fast it is, and how strong it is, and even its like sexuality, if it has one. Like everything informs the design, and it's important to understand those points.
Mm.
So here's it. For example, beyond just starting with those building blocks, those beginner building blocks of conveying storytelling through design. You also want to draw from real life. You can put pen to paper and create something like otherworldly, but really you want to draw inspiration from real life.
I think that's what makes it more fun. It's like really researching what exists in the real world, and then you find all these crazy, obscene creatures that you can actually bring into your own designs. Like,
Exactly.
it's a fun stage, like researching.
It's really fun, and it's the way towards success. If you can extrapolate from your reality and then merge ideas, then you can create some really memorable and very fantastical looking successful creature designs. It's all about
Yeah,
just trying to
absolutely.
kind of use every weapon in your arsenal. And so like research is fundamental. It's absolutely fundamental.
Always,
Be
yeah.
be that creative research and making things up yourself, or drawing from real world inspiration. And so once you've done the kind of storytelling side of it, the who, what, where, when, and why, and drawing from like the visuals of real life, then you can kind of get into the nitty gritty of understanding and thinking about comparative anatomy. So typically, when you're designing creatures, especially kind of how we do it on the Warhammer games, there's one of two ways you can do it. Some creatures tend to be like almost Cronenbergish, where they're kind of like super alien and there's nothing relatable about them. But others will draw inspiration from like again the skeletal muscular structures of real world creatures, and so we need to
Yeah.
understand how the anatomy works in that sense. And the great thing is, especially for like you did your kitties for the game.
Yeah.
All their muscles are so like the musculature of a cat is very similar to the musculature of a human.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a human on four legs.
Basically, yeah.
Like, it's strange.
Yes, but it's fantastic. So like you have to kind of understand that like having a strong foundation in anatomy is very important, and so that's kind of
Yes, always.
what we're trying to get across here. Again, when we're talking about understanding the diet of a creature, that informs the visual design, because there are certain visual cues that are important to us as humans when identifying predator or prey animals. So an example of that, a cat is a carnivore. Okay, so what does that mean in a anatomical sense? Well, it means that they have a short digestive tract, right? A small intestine. Now, this will make sense in a second. A sheep is a prey animal. They're a herbivore. I think you know where I'm going with this one, Jazz, right?
Yeah.
So what's going on there, huh?
It's a whole mess.
It's a whole
That's
mess.
what it is.
There's a whole there's a whole
Gross mess.
there's a whole highway system in there. Look at this boy. It's like a slinky. It's like a big slinky. And so what that means is that so for predators, typically predators will have more slender profiles. Okay, so like again, this is important for when you're trying to convey an idea to your audience. So if you want to create a predator type animal, you want to copy this kind of visual cue and understand that the reason that this anatomical configuration is in this way is because they have small intestines and they have this kind of like this slender profile. Deer, for example, so again they have like that big mass in their belly. Okay, and the same idea is for them, either monocular binocular vision, right? So like we see here, prey animals tend to have their eyes pointing to the side because it means they have a higher field of vision to see predators coming towards them. Dogs have binocular vision. They're looking forward. So what your creature eats is incredibly important towards its visual design. Again, do you want to explain why, Jazz, the cow has such a big old belly?
All that processing of grass and yeah, just hazing. That's all they do. Haze
Yeah,
about, walk around, eat, be lazy. And then, as you say, like with the eyes and everything, they can look behind themselves because they know that something's going to come attack them.
yeah, exactly. So like again, like if you wanted to create a cattle type character, this is kind of what you would copy, right? This is the kind of
Mhm.
idea that you would go for. So these are just all probably exhaustive at this point, but just good examples that show it matters what your character eats. It matters what you have to just put a lot of research into what you do for your just on paper before you even start thinking about design.
Mm.
So if you want to have a successful design is about conveying an idea to the viewer or the player in terms of a game, and so all these things matter. And again, so the diet of an animal again is going to affect not just the shape of its stomach but the musculature of the head and all around the body. So there are two major muscles in the head, I'm going to say, that are linked to the jaw. Do you want to take this one, Jazz? Can you tell me what this one's
I
called?
This is the temporalis muscle.
Yes, yeah, that's correct. How did you know
Yeah.
that? It's because you're so good. What's this one called?
I'm not sure. There's some words on the screen I can read. This is the
Okay,
masseter muscle.
yeah. So
These are like probably the most important things actually. Every time we do study anatomy in work or anything, we always concentrate on those two mostly. Even though they look small on screen, like right now, they actually prove a massive, massive point to when you're designing a creature. Um, and what I mean is like, say if you want to create a monster that's quite gnarly, he's a mean monster, you want to give him a massive like masseter muscle and a big mandible as well. It looks like they'll chomp on something. They like just bite down and it makes them more sinister that way.
yeah, it's exactly. I mean, these muscles are basically the biting muscle, right? So if you have
Yeah.
a carnivore or an animal or a creature that uses its mouth for attacking, it's going to have huge built-up temporalis and masseter. So this is temporalis and masseter in a human. So temporalis is big and masseter is like fairly small here. Because we've kind of just grown with the arrangement and we've kind of adapted, but we're omnivores. But with this activates when you chew, this activates when you chew as well.
Yeah.
Um, Look at a gorilla. It's
It's
crazy.
massive.
So they've actually grown a crest on their skull just to support the masser. It's fantastic. So like
And it's scary.
it's scary. Yeah, and they have like this kind of like the sagittal crest it's called.
Mm.
And what that means is like their anatomy has had to kind of appropriate itself to support this huge muscle. And it's massive. It's like a big 20-pound slab of steak just in their head
Hmm.
there. And again, the masseter is very very large as well.
Yeah, it's just like when you see that like gorilla or ape in real life, right? How terrifying do they look because of that massive muscle matter that you see?
They're just
That's
they're just huge. It's the same goes for for lizards. Lizards have alligators, for example, have crazy strong bites. They
mm.
also have temporalis and masseter in a slightly different arrangement, but they're still there. They have a very weak muscle for opening the jaw down here, though.
You can't open a alligator's jaw if you
Yeah,
hold it. Like if I think it's if you touch the snout or something, you can't open it again.
yeah. So because their anatomy has kind of been programmed in a way which gives them crazy high psi bites, they have a small. I think it's the pteryges, or I can't remember
Mm.
specifically what it's called.
Not
But
yeah.
there's a small muscle down here which affects how it opens its jaw. So like, yeah, you can put a rubber band around its face and it can't open its mouth.
Yeah.
Again, hippopotamus. Look at this. Look at this crest that's been built. It's evolved over the
Mm.
years just to support a huge masseter that comes up like that. But a tiny little temporalis in comparison.
That's a good point.
and it's got tiny little temporalities because all its force is coming from the master, just hooking down there.
And you see how they eat, right? In on videos and stuff, like they can just chomp anything in one go.
Yeah, there's
Massive
like
watermelon. It's
yeah,
gone.
I was gonna say the watermelon. There's like videos.
Oh,
There's just videos of them eating watermelons, and so when you understand these things, you can create, you can blend real life imagination, and your strong research together and build fantastic characters. So that's what we need to understand before we enter the monster factory, which is what I call it. It's a factory where monsters are made. So this is where we kind of think about, okay, now that we've done the research and we understand the fundamentals, okay, we can start to think about artistic principles, which run across the board. Doesn't matter what you're doing. It could be figure drawing, it could be environment art, it could be character art. It doesn't matter. These fundamentals are overseen by a great all-seeing eye, lidless.
yeah.
Wreathed
You
in
can pretty much. Oh, sorry, no.
I was doing a Lord of the Rings bit, but
I thought so, and then I cut you off.
no, it's fine. So do you want to explain these, Jazz?
Yeah, so it's just so as you say, it's like you look at a monster, it's always pretty much breaking down into these 4 elements, you can say, and your eye can pick any of these up instantly. Flow, for example, is like what leads the eye to a specific part of the piece. So like it will all flow to one direction, and you can choose which point you want to like make stand out. Like the eyes of a human, if you want to make that stand out, the flow should go towards the eyes. If that makes sense. I'm not entirely sure, but you see some examples. Same thing with balance. It's like if there's too much of one thing, it can be too noisy and your eyes will wander off, sort of thing. You want to have a good balance of like something a little bit detailed and something empty, so your
Like
eyes
a dinner.
have, like,
You want a balanced dinner. You want a balanced piece of art, right?
healthy bacon, all that.
Yeah.
Good healthy meal.
We'll get into these obviously later. Then we have like obviously shape, language, and forms, which are about how the arrangement of the larger and smaller details affect the piece as a whole. So flow. What's flow?
Flow is a flow. You can see literally right here where you're pointing. It's just a really nice like flow, I can say. But
Yeah.
you can tell that your eyes go straight to the middle because that's where the main focal point is.
It's the idea of using lines and rhythm to lead the eye around a piece of art. So this is how it works in just traditional art, okay? Your eyes are being controlled by the artist to look in a certain way.
Right there.
Or along a certain path. So I'm drawn to this orange line and around to these kind of concentric circles. So
and it's successful.
Yeah, you want to employ flow to create distinct focal points and to stop compositions from looking disorganized. Flow can be used in all sorts of manners. For example, like one of my favorite artists, Norman Rockwell, flow is being used here to point to the action. Okay, this is where the action is. This is the focal point. All these lines, even though they point out the way, are pointing in the way towards the action because it's kind of supported by these gesture lines running up. So this is the focal point. This is where we want to look. This is where the storytelling is. And this could be employed in character art, very successfully. Notably, a very good example is Diablo from Diablo 3. So Jazz, you had a good example, a good way of describing this earlier.
Oh yeah, it's just eyes, right? It's like all those horns on the heads, even on the arms. If you know, you have to like probably look deep into it, but you can see it all just points towards those eyes. The shoulder mouths, I guess. Again, like all those horns on the shoulders point straight to the mouth. It's like, there you go.
Yeah, what I'm going to do is just draw. It's a red pen, so it's not actually the best example. But you have all these lines of gesture flowing up towards the main focal point, which is the head. Okay, like bam.
Yes.
So
that's the perfect way of like.
Look at this. Look at this nice gesture as well. You got this lovely gesture from these spikes here. So it's the idea of using flow
lines,
to create a focal point, which is up here. Okay, so that's kind of it. Avoid right angles when you're using flow to stress focal points because right angles are inherently man-made. I mean, I think beyond like maybe a bismuth crystal, there's not many right angles in the natural world. I might be wrong about that, but right angles look man-made, so avoid them. Parallel lines look man-made, like that kind of thing on a character. Okay, avoid them.
Mm.
You want to avoid things like that. Okay, like it just makes it look constructed, and the idea is you want it to look natural. You don't want to. If you're building a robot, make right angles by all means, because that's kind of the visual design you should be going for. But when doing organic creatures, maybe not so much. Yeah, like a lot of it's kind of like gesture drawing as well. So these are some like old gesture drawings I did back in like 20 something. I don't know when, like maybe like the early 2010s. And these are some I did like a few years ago now. But you can see
You instantly see the difference, right? Like in the first one, actually rather in the second one, you still have like your construction lines, and you still have your I can say like rigid models, I guess, like your construction of the rib cage and stuff. It's hard edged, but you still have those super smooth and round lines. You still have the curves, and it makes you instantly read where the flow is going.
the
So
strong
yeah,
like the strong lines of action.
yes,
You know
it's much more complementary to the eyes.
exactly. So lines of action, flow, they're important, and they apply not just to kind of traditional art, but also to designing successful creatures. But of course, balance has to come into play too. And balance is a strange one. Balance refers to how elements of a design relate to each other, and so you kind of have to use it in tandem with all the things we're going to talk about today. This could be through value, color, or form, which is the main. Well, that kind of describes everything, right? Value. There's not really anything other than value, color, or form. You want your designs to be balanced, okay? Imbalanced designs can be successful, but they need to be purposefully deconstructed.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be, if you want an imbalanced design, it has to be done so to produce a specific emotional response, which we'll get into later. But basically, balance. If you're thinking about balance in terms of color and value, you don't want to create something that looks gaudy or it looks like an attack on the senses, and so that's why we have to think about visual hierarchies in terms of balance. So if we look at the gradients on these characters here, like they have strong visual hierarchies. The largest proponent of the higher values at the top, whereas it blends down to darker values at the bottom. There's a nice successful.
And it's readable, right?
Exactly.
It's still...
They're readable, and they are, very like gentle on the eyes. When we introduce color to them, the colors are balanced in terms of percentiles, which is an important thing we need to kind of think about in terms of balance, because that kind of ties into forms as well. It's not just color. So when we think about this, what we have to kind of consider is, what do we want our primary color to be? Okay, so the primary color is the primary read in terms of clarity of color. So blue, brown, reddish brown, purple, greenish yellow.
Yellow.
Like that's that's kind of the main read we're getting from these. Okay, and it's successful because that's the main thing we're picking out. So in terms of how this works, is that through the use of balance and color, you can evoke a specific response. And this is successful. This is very common in mascot characters who, in a franchise, we understand to perform a certain action, right? So like fire types are always kind of red as their primary color, or yellow. They have a warm tone. Water types are blue. Grass types are green. It's tried and tested, and it is very much a successful proponent in conveying an idea to the player. If something's a poison character, then it's going to be like purple and
green and purple.
Yeah, exactly. So like you want to consider this, but you don't want to go overboard, because you want to complement those colors with secondary and tertiary ones. Okay, so these are perfectly balanced.
Yeah, you don't want like something that's like pure red on the same value. It's always good to have that balance. It always conveys something.
Exactly. So something else that I kind of considered is important is the 70-30 rule. Have I kind of talked to you about this one before?
No, actually, no. This is
Okay,
new to me.
so yeah, it's something that I can consider. Right, if I want a character to be like fierce and spiky and harsh, I'm going to use 70% harsh lines and then 30% soft lines to balance them out. So then you have balance. Okay,
Mm.
now my math is poor, but that should add up to 100%. Um,
Wait, 70, 80, 90? Yes, it
yes.
does.
um, so you can see we have lots of harsh lines here. Okay, so we're achieving balance through form. So if this was spiky all over, it would just be too noisy to look at. Okay,
Mess. Yeah.
but we have these nice rest areas. Okay, these smoother areas, which help balance these areas of high noise and high frequency. And because they're high frequency, they also create focal points.
Forms, focal
For
point, and flow.
This is getting a bit
It
messy.
all adds up.
Yeah, but so like these are focal points now, and what are these areas? What are these spiky focal points in terms of this character design? Would you say?
Because they're spiky, the triangles,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
evil. It's nasty. It's gnarly.
Or they're
So it kind of
dangerous,
shows.
right?
Yes. So it shows the main points of this creature, like where it's mostly dangerous, where to
Exactly.
watch out, and where to look out from is from these specific points.
Exactly, and it's also using color here too, because all the parts of the Rathalos which are dangerous are like tipped black.
Like dark, and, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So like again, successful design by using balance through shape and color. Fantastic. And we can keep doing that through all of our designs. Again, just a good example of flow, and balance. So like largely, there's not much noise here. Okay, it's
Mm.
kind of nice. It's gentle. There's nothing much to look at. All the noise is through the forms and silhouette here, but there's also a nice flow leading towards this large rest area in the main
Mm.
body of the piece. I just thought it was quite nice.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually.
Um,
Something so sinister. It's very curvy.
do you remember this
Sorry.
guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always.
So let me ask you this, Jazz.
Oh no.
So this guy kind of breaks the rules that we've been talking about. There's purposeful imbalance in this design, you know. So he's in balance, but he is kind of mutating, you know. So like that's kind of by design. His imbalance is
Mm.
successful because we're evoking a emotional response. He's supposed to use so the imbalance in design can usually evokes horror or fear, like there's something
Mm.
not quite right, like something's wrong, and so that's kind of like why this design is so successful. Birkin, so
Mhm.
this is Birkin from Resident Evil 2. He's monstrous as he becomes infected, but he slowly becomes symmetrical as he perfects himself over time.
Mm.
You know, as he evolves. So where's the focal point?
If you're pointing to the last one,
Sorry,
I'm
this
not sure
this
what
one
the.
here, the first one.
Oh, the first one. There you go. Yeah, it's not pointing anywhere. It's that massive, ugly ass eye. It's
Hello,
gross.
it's this.
It's like screaming at you.
It's this. It's also, in terms of flow, this entire arm, the thing you should
Yeah.
be afraid of, right? You know, as like this is like warning bells. You know, stay away from this. Stay away from me.
Mm.
Again, this one, the eye. But again, huge imbalance through design. This is the weaponized part of him, and then he becomes symmetrical over time. He's obviously spooky to look at, but he's still
Mm.
designed in a way that makes him kind of balanced thematically because he's kind of like now the perfect hunter in the game. He's
Yeah.
kind of perfected himself. But
And
usually,
it goes.
on you go.
Oh, sorry. I
Sorry.
was going to say sorry. It goes back to your first point of storytelling, right?
Mm,
It's still readable in every stages, even though it's unbalanced. It's purposely imbalanced, but yeah, it's telling that story.
exactly. It's telling the story of him kind of slowly transforming to the perfect life form almost. So shape language. We we,
Shapes,
we know about shapes.
few shapes,
How many shapes do you know, Jazz?
like seven,
Seven shapes. I'm very proud of you.
seven shapes.
Um,
Thank you.
so yeah, through shape language, we can convey a lot through shapes, and largely shape language is done through primary form, like silhouette. So we need to try and think about how the use of shapes in our silhouette and our major reads imbues
Mm.
designs with personality. So the same character,
Mm.
what's the difference?
All these shapes. And
They're yeah, exactly. So this one's made of circles, this one's made of squares, this one's made of triangles.
yeah, so I guess like they all tell their own like character, I guess. Like if it's a circle shape, circle is cute because it's round. It's like adorable. So if you do want to convey a cute monster, round shapes, that's the way to go. Something like square, like in the middle, really strong, I guess. It's like a like you say with the jaw, right? It's a massive
Exactly.
shape, it's strong, stubborn,
Even
yeah.
slow,
So
maybe.
that's yes, absolutely. Like if you think
Like maybe like maybe
slow, there we go.
dim as well. Like
Hmm.
kind of dim or like a and triangle. I would say like fast. Sleek.
Yeah, like very sleek, dangerous as well for me anyway, because I've probably sculpted like so many horns on different monsters. It's just like spiky, it's dangerous.
You're totally right.
Yeah, you know.
So the same idea, but different emotional responses. So your primary read, your silhouette matters. A great
Oh, it
example: this Pikachu from 400 BC um, is kind of he's very there's not kind of a lot of rhythm
yeah.
in his design, and there's a lot of right angles, not a lot of balance. This is just better proportions, and it's using softer shapes. Like look at this, look at the
Yeah.
ears here. There's like a triangle, but these ones are kind of like
A
little.
slight curve. It's so subtle as well, but compared to the first one, but it does really push that cuteness overload look, you know.
Even look at his feet here compared to his
Like
feet here.
squidgy.
These little triangular
Yeah.
breakups kind of break up the design. He's a lot cuter here, and there's a lot more flow and shape language kind of being obeyed, and it's just yeah, he's a much more successful design here,
Yeah.
and it's obeying a lot of the points that we could have talked about. Smaug, kind of the
Oh,
same
my
idea.
favorite.
So like
Mm.
ferocious, right? We have this large line here, okay?
Straight line that's like you don't want to touch those, you know? They're gonna like pinch right through you.
And we have triangles. So the triangular shapes are telling us he's ferocious. And what are they all
Mm.
doing?
They're all pointing through flow
So they're all
to one
flowing down to the
direction.
heads. And in this example here as well,
Yeah.
they're all flowing towards the heads, toward the focal point, because this is where you want to be looking.
I
Um,
guess this is a very common, I want to say like a demon uh design, I guess. Like if you want to create a monster that's very demonish, always think about the horns on the head and how they just point right to the eyes and to the sinister smile. It really, really works.
exactly. So like also check out this line here, okay? So you have this kind of balance here. We have a strong straight line and then
Mm.
curves. The curves
Nice
down
curve.
here break up the monotony of the straight lines because there aren't really curves
Yeah.
anywhere else on the character. Okay, the curves in the silhouette are formed by the kind of breakup on the neck here. So there's a
Even
lot.
on the sides, like
Yeah.
on the neck, you know, they have that spike go the spines running down, but you still have those round forms surrounding
Mm.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about seeking that balance, you know. Um,
Mm.
Forms, and so forms are again we've kind of talked about them already, but they are the your primary form is your silhouette, and that's kind of what the shape language section was
Mm-hmm.
about, right? Um,
Mm.
so your silhouette is a I'm sure you could recognize any one of these characters based on this slide.
Yes.
Yes, yes. So your primary form is your silhouette. We need to learn how to break up forms to create focal points and areas of rest. So any other form within the character design is within the silhouette. Over designing something can destroy good design, and so you want to make sure that you understand the hierarchy of forms: primary, secondary, and tertiary. So your primary form, as I've said, is silhouette. The secondary form breaks up the silhouette and frames the
Mm.
tertiary forms, and the tertiary forms attracts the eye.
This mess. See, Danny has this picture all the time sometimes, and it blows my mind because my brain cannot comprehend these colors, and that's what makes it work. So it's like a massive, like big forms, but then it's just overpowered with noise, the one word I can't say, tertiary forms, which is the noise essentially. It's all overpowering. So you can see how that translates on the right? In the picture, it's just noisy, very noisy. It's nothing
Yeah.
balanced in there.
So there's a bad hierarchy of forms here. So you have large primary forms, kind of secondary forms smattered around, okay? But
Mm.
then you have equidistant and arranged tertiary forms represented by these yellow squares, and your eye is drawn to the yellow squares.
Mm.
There's nothing you can do about it. And this is kind of like reminiscent of like just like Gaussian noise. Like
It's just unreadable. It's just mess.
it's not readable at all. It's just not great. But if we take this concept and arrange the forms, okay? If we arrange
Yeah.
the forms, then we can create focal points and areas of rest.
Yeah, that's the main, very important thing is you need an area of rest.
And we can make
You
things
see
look
that in
more
the middle.
natural. It's an important concept to kind of understand. For example, in the Dark Elf Dreadlords, here's an example and breakdown of the forms used in them. So the primary forms are the silhouette, as you can see, all the red parts. The blue parts are the secondary forms, which kind of still break up the silhouette, but in a lesser way. And the tertiary forms are specifically here, utilizing focal points and flow or areas of interest.
Tiny.
Tiny little things, okay? Tiny little things, and you can see how it's a successful design based on a strong breakup of forms. I'm still quite happy with these ones.
Yeah, because
So next up, I have some examples of other creatures which kind of employ all the good things we talked about.
I love these.
They're great, right? So do you want to talk about any of the things here? Like what do you see? I see flow.
Yeah, it's interesting when I said adorable, right? Because it's like it's round, but they still have just those little bit of noise of the sharpness. Like you say, it's flow, it's shape language. So yeah, I see like a perfect S form, but it just has a little bit of balance with the spikes and such.
Absolutely.
And I still think it's a really cute design. Like I still read it as adorable.
It's super cute. And it's got, a fantastic breakup of balance. You have these focal points, and these focal points are not just kind of jumping at you in terms of their the noise and the silhouette, but rather in the color breakup as well. Because you've got these green stripes, it's creating these focal points. Just very very well balanced and very very nice and friendly, but also kind of potentially dangerous, potentially barbed. So but a really successful design nonetheless.
Always, yeah.
Another great example. Look at this gorgeous flow here.
Yeah. Such a big creature, and then it just like turns into this like beautiful, lavished fins and such. It's
Exactly.
really, really well done.
And look at the balance of color.
Yeah.
Nice breakup of color, and also look at the forms up here. What's going on with
Yeah.
these? Where's your focal point?
It's not even. It's not that much, but it's there.
Yeah, it's
Like
just
you can see them, and it's not noisy or anything. It's just a good balance.
exactly. Just a very successful design.
Same with the valleys as well. Like,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So another great example is I think we looked at these scales when we were doing Dark Elf stuff, but in terms of tertiary forms or secondary forms and the arrangements we were talking about just a moment ago, you can see all these squares next to each other.
It's too much. Sorry, it's like a chessboard, and you can see like why research is important, because if you're trying to this is a crocodilian, right? You need to convey that information if you're trying to pass it off as almost like a reptile in a sense. And that's why this first one, it really doesn't work, because nothing is so unnatural. Like nothing flows together. It's all just one shape. The squares, it's just one. But you take a look on the right, and you can really, really see like they put some proper research into that belly. There's like certain parts where there's a bigger scale mass, and then smaller scales like on the wrinkles, on the rest area in the middle, and then a massive mass. I'm touching the screen thinking everyone could see me. Sorry.
I'm the
There's a
one drawing
massive
things
map.
down.
Yeah, you can draw for me.
But yeah, you're
Um,
right, and also just like so, this is much better arranged. It's not
yeah,
your eye isn't confused or drawn to this strange kind of focal point now, but rather you're looking at the heads. You're looking at this again. Look what we've got here. Look what's going on.
yep,
Look what's going on
right to the
here.
middle.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, to the glowy eyes
You got
and that
flow going
grin.
on from these
That's
ridges.
how you do it.
It's so successful. It's great.
Mm,
Um, and just a nicer silhouette overall. You
yeah,
know, just
just
a stronger primary shape.
it gives way more. You understand more of the story of this guy. Like he's massive. He's evil because he's hunched over and he's got these massive scales on his back that's gonna hurt you.
Exactly.
It's great.
Exactly. It's great.
That's how you do storytelling.
And again, as the last example, not a great example of visual hierarchy here
Mhm.
on the one on the right. I don't know where I'm supposed to be looking because everything is just noisy. There's not really
Mhm.
any primary forms for me to look at. So like
Yep.
I don't understand what I'm looking at here. I think he's probably a bit confused himself.
I think so. It's like, who
Um,
am I?
but if we look at this one here, look at how great this is.
It's just
So
simple as well. It's
it's
just simple shapes.
simple. There's large shapes, nice
And this
large
is a
shapes.
man-made thing, right? It's still
That's a really
it's
good point.
still curves, and you still want hard shapes, kind of thing. Like it works in terms of balance.
It works in terms of balance, and there's areas of rest and areas of interest to look at. You know, there's a better hierarchy of forms, as I'm
Mm.
kind of indicating here. So
Yeah.
primary, secondary, tertiary. These kind of
You just made a smiley face now.
well, it's already there. There's already another type of this. There's
Little nose.
these kind of pistons and stuff in here are also
Yeah.
your kind of tertiary forms as well, you know. But like there's more balance. There's not just noise. This is all just noise, and I don't know
Mm.
what.
And it's no balance of color either. Like it's still, even the color is just so noisy to my eyes. You
Yeah,
look on the left, you can see it's yellow with a hint of gray.
like still probably in some ways a successful design. This one on the right, but I
Mm.
think in terms of rules that we're talking about today, not a great example of them. I hope that was informative because we are now at the end of the session.
Oh.
So that's kind of just the oh, that's kind of the rules that we kind of employ on the team when we are designing things. And I hope that
Yeah.
that was an informative kind of run through, kind of quick run through of what we kind of
Yeah.
employ and what we talk about.
A quick run through.
What do you
But
think,
yeah, that's pretty
Jazz?
much it. Yeah, that's like you say, that's pretty much our Bible, I think. It's like anytime we start a new creature, a new character, we always have those elements in mind. And yeah, I think that's just what makes anything work. Even the most fantastical creature that you can't really rely on much anatomy or something, if you at least have story or balance or anything behind it, it will be a successful creature.
Exactly,
You know?
exactly. It's preparation. Preparation is everything, and understanding those rules that we've talked about just helps you troubleshoot when you're stuck, and that's the
Yes.
big thing. You know, we want to be successful at what we do as artists, and we want to have the best tool sets available to us to convey what we want to the viewer.
Hmm.
And that's the big thing for me, I think, is that
Yeah.
it's really about just trying to kind of successfully tell a story. You know, a picture tells 1,000 words, etc. So you know
Yeah.
you want to read as much as you can from the first time you see something. Is it friendly? Is it dangerous? Is it a
Mhm.
mutant? Is it a big cat in a hat that I can pat on the head?
Oh no.
Oh
Here it comes.
no. But yeah, like that's why these kind of rules are like close to my heart, I suppose, and I think they are to yours too,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I've done well sticking by them.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Always.
so I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
That's it, really. I think we pretty much covered like the base. Really, it's yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I will say this has been a strange interaction in a way because usually we would be in person and it would be easier to
yeah.
kind of be like, no, Jazz can talk.
It's very strange because like, yeah. Now I feel bad because I'm probably cutting out everything that you're
Oh no,
saying, and I don't
stop. It's
realize
fine.
it's a very bizarre
It's
thing for me.
it's more that I just talk a lot.
No, 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 no.
But
Yeah,
yeah, cool. I guess that's it then. So thank you very much for
yeah.
joining us, and I hope you
Thank
have a
you,
wonderful
guys.
day.